Welcome back to the news at 10. The Minister of Environment, Mrs. Amina Mohammed, appears set to step into her new role as the Deputy Secretary-General of the United Nations, an appointment which was announced by the new UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres. The Minister has been giving account of her stewardship, listing the Ogoni Cleanup and the establishment of the Great Green Wall as legacies which will outlive her. She further noted that the war on environmental pollution is entering a critical implementation phase in the first quarter of 2017.
From supervising Nigeria's contributory implementation of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change to cut back carbon emissions by 27% over the next 15 years, outgoing Minister of Environment Amina Mohammed now moves to superintend over the coordination and administration of United Nations policy around the world.
Has no hiding place. It is her top quality that has earned her this position. We pray sincerely that God in His infinite mercy will continue to guide and protect her.
Urging patience from the locals in the Niger Delta, the outgoing minister emphasized that the cleanup of Ogoni land is in effect and on course. The minister stated that laws establishing agencies under the ministry have been revised for a legislative amendment to ensure greater efficacy, while critical infrastructure and equipment have been updated with further construction in progress.
If we want the sustainability of the cleanup, we must put in place structures that don't allow this program to be rolled back in years to come. Clearly, there were no governance structures that were put in place to ensure that we would be able to spend $1 billion over 5 years to do the cleanup in Ogoni land. So what we were able to do is to put a governing council in place, to put the board of trustees, to set up the structure for the High Prep office in our premises in Port Harcourt.
The outgoing minister affirmed that progress has been recorded in reducing the sulfur content in Nigeria's fuel supply to reduce emissions, even as the ministry has partnered with the Federal Road Safety Corps to remove excessively polluting vehicles from the road.
First program that they're taking on the vehicle emissions will happen in FCT. Equipment has been bought for that, and what they're trying to do is calibrate it so we can begin it. What we found was that you can't do any of these things in isolation. So I think that addressing the sulfur in the fuel is a major step to ensuring that we get cleaner fuel in the vehicles to begin with.
While the new UN deputy boss leaves the domestic environment to make influential inputs affecting the environment of the global village, she maintains that her keen interest in Nigeria's environmental health will not abate as she departs office.
Respite seems to be on the way for electricity consumers here in Lagos State with the intervention of the House of Representatives. During a public forum between the Electricity Arbitration Group of the National Assembly, the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission and the Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company Management Team in Lagos, electricity consumers were assured of a more economical billing system and a more efficient customer redress mechanism.
Some electric power consumers in Lagos State delegates of National Electricity Regulatory Commission and the Ikeja Electricity Distribution Company Management Team are in a brawl. Their grouse is what they call the nonchalant attitude of the House of Representatives Committee on Power for an open forum scheduled between them. After the wait and the brawl, the arbitration group from the National Assembly arrives. Then the bickering gives way to an orderly session. Once the quorum is formed, the lawmakers take the consumers' complaints, ranging from metering and overbilling to epileptic power supply and poor maintenance of electricity facilities.
Response to faulty materials when an equipment is having problems like transformers, feeder pillars, G&P, all sorts. When they have fault, their response to that is very, very slow.
Just then, the lawmakers mediate with interrogations. However, the management of NERC and Ikeja Disco promised to explore all avenues to solving metering problems and ensure transparency and diligence in maintaining electricity facilities within their purview.
You write to them, tell them what your complaints are. There's a timeline within which they must respond to your complaints.
Trust me, we have no desire to cheat anybody. We'll be transparent in all that we do. And I hope that as time goes on, very soon you start to see that the estimated bills will come down and we will continue to meet that as best as we can.
The lawmakers make it clear that no electricity consumer anywhere in the country should be deprived.
We will work with the Ikeja Disco, like every other disco distribution company. We'll work with the generation company and transmission to make sure that Nigerians have a better deal when it comes to regulation.
At the end of the day, these consumers are left with hopes that sooner than they think, the power situation in their homes will change for the better.
Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Anne Waldron.
Thanks a lot, Ijama. Welcome to the world of business. As Nigeria plans to borrow 2.36 trillion naira to finance its 2017 budget deficit, the Debt Management Office has asked Nigerians to come to terms with this proposal. Justifying the aim of the borrowing plan today in Lagos, the Director General of the agency, Mr. Abraham Nwakwo, says though Nigeria's debt burden is huge, it is a necessity.
Support for that major source of income or revenue to collapse drastically by more than 60%, puts a bigger burden. It puts a burden on everybody in the society, but to be frank with you, it puts a greater burden on the public debt manager. Because invariably, when your revenues, whether as an individual, family, as a company, or as a country, if you are a revenue force, one of the most appealing alternatives or options for you is to look into debt. But to take a debt is not as easy as that. You have to. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing as to how will you use the process or that to solve your problem and be able to repair, and more importantly, how it can help you to build self-sustainability so that you don't come back to the same type of challenge that led you in the first instance to think in terms of mass borrowing.
It's the third consecutive week of rally for Nigeria's equities market, with the biggest gains recorded in the oil and gas sector. For more trading analysis, let's join Bisi Adebayo.
Welcome to the Stock Market Report. In line with traders and analysts' expectations, the domestic stock market finished by the same margin it posted on Thursday to firm up above 26,000 index and higher total market value of 9.18 trillion naira. Union Bank posted a strategic share transaction of $8.5 million, amounting to nearly 80% of total turnover, followed by UBA and NEM Insurance. Ecobank Transnational, Fitton Healthcare and Cement Company of Northern Nigeria were the top gainers, while Forte Oil, Unilever and Portland Paints led the decliners. Overall turnover came in at 874.33 million shares, worth 4.38 billion naira in 3,387 deals. That ends the stock market report. I am Bisi Adebayo.
Thanks a lot, BC. The stock market rally on Wall Street, induced by Mr. Trump's election as the next U.S. president, is yet to fade out as the Dow Jones Industrial Average nears 20,000 level. With more on the major indexes on Wall Street, here is Jill Malandrino, VOA business correspondent for Channels Television in New York.
Stocks opened higher on this final day of trading this week, where volumes are expected to be higher than normal due to options expiration. But take a look at this. The Dow Jones remains on track for its 6th straight weekly win. We were up about 0.5% for the week coming in today. The blue chip benchmark on Thursday traded less than 50 points from that key 20,000 level at one point as bank stocks continued to move higher. Stocks resumed their post-election rally yesterday after a one-day pullback, despite continued strength in the dollar to levels we've not seen since 2003, which is also why we're getting that dip in gold. Financials led yesterday's gains as bond yields jumped to more than 2-year highs, while tech likely will be a top mover after we got some good results out of Adobe, JBL Circuits, and Oracle overnight. Now, both the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, they've joined the party. They closed higher on Thursday, rebounding from Wednesday's losses, and we're on track for small gains this week across the board. The declines came Wednesday after the Fed lifted interest rate hikes and signaled 3 hikes would come in 2017. But it seems as if that Trump bump rally still has some steam. We have fund managers out there chasing performance. So right now on the U.S. Open, it looks like we are on track to close the week green. From the NASDAQ market site in Times Square, New York, I'm Jill Malandrino, and this is BOA Channel's Business TV.
Thank you, Jill. European stocks closed higher today as investors continue to digest the Federal Reserve's rate hike and eye fresh economic data. Meanwhile, Asian shares recovered from Thursday's downturn as the yuan hits its lowest level against the dollar since May 2008. Let's check out the numbers.